的各位来宾，会议现在正式开始，让我们掌声有请会议主持人登台。Ladies and gentlemen, the session now officially starts. Let's welcome our host with a round of applause.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, welcome you all for the WLA Zero Carbon Forum. Science leads transformation in carbon measurement. Scientific carbon measurement opens the way for accurate carbon neutrality. Currently, carbon neutrality and emission peaking has become a very important way for green development. All countries are exploring and practicing. However, due to the differences in countries, regions, and industries, carbon emission accounting, carbon treating technical standards are not centralized. Carbon neutrality and measurement needs to be improved. Carbon emission measurement system should be strengthened. In this forum, we hope that scientists, entrepreneurs, and experts can discuss how to design a systematic, accurate, and comparable measurement system as well as a universal standard. So in this way, we can help companies to narrow the carbon divide and so as to build a low carbon development path that is comparable and accountable. Today, we have many honorable distinguished guests. Next, please allow me to introduce all the leaders and guests today. They are Liu Hongliang, Director of the Department of the Metrology, SAMR. Welcome. President of CIPM, Mr. Wenlan Lo. Welcome. President of NIM, Mr. Fang Xiang. Welcome. David Silverman, Laureate of Welfare Prize Laureate in Agriculture. Wu Xiaohua, Deputy Secretary of Lingang New Area. Welcome. Deputy Director General of Shanghai Market Regulation Administration, Peng Wenhao. Deputy Director General Wang Yiyang from Shanghai Municipal Administration for Market Regulation. Professor Tu Shandong from CAE. Academician Liu Wenqing from CAE. Welcome. President of Shenergy, Mr. Ni Bing. Welcome. Head of Energy and Environment at the NPL, Mr. Richard Bach. Deputy Director and Research Fellow of the Institute of Energy, Environment and Economy, Tsinghua University, Mr. Duan Maoshen. And Professor Xing Xianjun from Hefei Industrial University. At the same time, we have also invited distinguished guests from SAMR, NIM China, China Metrology Association, as well as the Management Committee of Lingang New Area, and many other metrology institutions and the Technological Institute of Carbon Reduction and Shanghai Municipal Market Regulation Administration, and the professors and representatives from universities, colleges, institutions, and famous companies. Welcome you all. Next, let's welcome Director of the Metrology Department, SAMR, Liu Hongliang, to deliver a speech. Distinguished President Wen Lao, Professor David Chairman, academicians from the CAE, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's my great pleasure to meet friends, both old and new, at the lakeside of Dishui Lake for WLA Zero Carbon Forum Science Leads Transformation in Carbon Measurement. So on behalf of an interested by SAMR, I would like to extend my warm welcome to all of you, and I would like to pay high tribute to people who have long been caring and supporting the work of Neutrality. President Xi has mentioned that science and technology are great innovative activity, and we should have a global perspective. And the WLA this year takes science leads transformation as its theme. We hope to pull the wisdom from the whole world and address the challenges facing all human beings. And we hope to have the voice from science and technology. And today we are here for the Zero Carbon Forum because we would like to use metrology technologies to realize the carbon neutrality and emission peaking, and we would like to take metrology and measurement as very important support for green development. When addressing climate change, China is very pragmatic. The Chinese government places a great emphasis on the role of measurement in terms of climate change, and SAMR and many other ministries and administrations have realized the technical systems to help to realize the carbon neutrality and the carbon emission peaking, and by improving the system. And we also have some pilot measures, and we also have action plans for different stages. Currently, SAMR has already established the National Dual Carbon Neutrality Technical Committee in Guangdong, Shandong, Fujian. We have built the carbon metrology centers. So relying on NIM and SAMR, we will have breakthroughs in key technology and transfer the scientific achievements in the field of coal power, transportation, forestry, etc. So in this way, we can have explorations in terms of carbon accounting, clean energy adaptation. For a very long time, the Chinese government are promoting the international collaboration. We will support CIPM, OIML to strengthen the carbon accounting and related national and rules formulation. We will increase our cooperation with all the National Institute of Metrology so as to promote the metrology system, and we hope to centralize the certification and the standards. And in this way, we can provide technical support for carbon trading. We will also collaborate with different universities and institutes to speed up the carbon accounting technology so as to we can realize the carbon dual goals as the schedule. Ladies and gentlemen, at today's forum, we hope to promote the ideas exchanges and promote collaborations in terms of carbon measurement and promote the carbon measurement development in China. I think your discussions today will help to build the carbon measurement system in China. We hope that you can seize this opportunity so as to exchange your opinions with us and provide your wisdom for us. We would like to make concerted efforts to share this opportunity for a better future. Last but not least, I would like to wish this forum a full success, and I would like to wish you health and a pleasant staying here. Thank you. Thank you very much, Director General Liu. Please have a seat. Next, we will have the inauguration ceremony of Shanghai Carbon Peak Carbon Neutral Measurement Technology Committee, and this committee, the SIMT has collaborated with related institutes, universities, colleges, institutes, companies to build this technology commitment. And this commitment is the first technology commitment at the new municipal level. And in the future, the technology committee will help to promote the dual carbon technology, improve its measurement system, so as to help the policy making in terms of dual carbon and provide technical support for dual carbon goals. So first of all, the floor will be given to Wang Yiyang to read the inauguration document of this technology committee. Shanghai Administration for Market Regulation agrees to set up the Shanghai Carbon Peak Carbon Neutral Measurement Technology Committee and SIMT applied to build the Shanghai Carbon Peak Carbon Neutral Measurement Technology Committee, and our line is as follows. We agree to set up the Shanghai Carbon Peak Carbon Neutral Measurement Technology Committee, and according to the Technology Committee's charter, the work will be conducted. The secretariat is located at SIMT. The directors is Xu Zhenxin, Deputy Director is Liu Jia, Secretary General and the member is Wang Cai, Deputy Secretary General and the member is Ding Zhenming, and the member is Wang Dajun, and a total of 35 measures. Thank you. Director General Wang, please have a seat. Next, the floor will be given to Director General Liu Hongliang and the Deputy Director General Peng Wenhao to inaugurate the Technology Committee altogether. Thank you, Director Liu and Director Peng. Please have a seat. Next, we will have the launch ceremony of Technology Empowers Carbon Measurement Step into the Future Hand in Hand. Shanghai Initiative. Carbon measurement is a very important way for us to use energy effectively, upgrade the industry structure, and have a green daily food and a green transformation of the whole society. So progress in carbon measurement is a very important way for the whole society to address the climate change and realize sustainable development. Today, heads from governments, universities, and colleges are here.
So we're going to make a joint commitment in the future in the carbon metrology. We're going to have a win-win cooperation so as to have a common development. Now let's warmly welcome all the VIPs go to the stage. Ni Bing, President of Shen Energy Group. The Lin Gang, the Party Secretary Wu Xiaohua. Wu Fangling, the China Metrology Association, the Chairman. Lin Gang, the Secretary of the Party Committee of Metrology Test Technology. Wei Wendong from Ji Shenling, Wang Lu, Shanghai Metrology Association. So you can check out the screen to see the titles of the names of these VIPs. So first of all, let's warmly welcome Ni Bing, President of the Shen Energy Group, to read out the statement. Let's welcome. Well, science and technology empowerment, carbon neutrality, and metrology measurement, Shanghai statement. You know that the climate change is a common challenge of human mankind. Carbon peak and carbon neutrality has become a common goal of all countries. In the process, achieving this goal, carbon measurement technology development application is paramount important in order to promote progress of carbon measurement technology. Government, institutions, companies, universities, and scientists various parties should play their own role and make a contribution. Hereby, we make a joint statement. First, the government should play a leading role to formulate relevant policies, laws, regulations, strengthen the R&D and application of the carbon measurement technology to build up a system and improve it, strengthen the carbon market supervision so as to create a good assurance for the carbon measurement technology. Second, institutions and companies should be very active to carry out R&D and innovation of the carbon measurement technologies to make these measurements more accurate, reliable, so as to reduce the carbon measurement cost, to advance the continuous progress of measurement technology, to be very active to have carbon capture and the sequestration technology, R&D and development, so as to make a contribution and support to the carbon peak and carbon neutrality. Third, universities and research bodies should be very active carrying out the development of talents and introduction of talents to have more professional talents to progress the development and application of carbon measurement technology, to be active for the technology cooperation, introducing advanced technology from board and managerial expertise so as to improve the carbon measurement technology level. Four, scientists should play their role in the carbon measurement technology to carry out basic research, to promote carbon measurement technology continuous innovation, to be very active carry out the science and technology publicity, to increase people's knowledge and understanding about the carbon peak and carbon neutrality so as to create very sound social environment for the carbon peak and carbon neutrality. Five, various parties should be very active to participate in domestic international cooperation collaboration, to have the sharing of resources, the win-win cooperation, to make a joint efforts to build up the carbon measurement the system, to have a mutual recognition of carbon measurement, to make a contribution to the carbon peak and carbon neutrality, to make a great contribution to the fair and justice the climate system. Let's join hands to create carbon peak and carbon neutrality and make a joint effort. Thank you very much. Thank you, President Ni. So all the distinguished guests and all the distinguished guests, let's make the statement. Well, just put your hand on this position on the screen. 3, 2, 1. Oh, let's witness this wonderful moment. Well, please turn around and take a group picture together. Thank you, all the leaders. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Today, well, in this 20-minute opening ceremony, we have listened to and have witnessed on the determination to advance the carbon measurement technology. Well, and we have pointed out good direction by our leaders and give us a confidence on the future. Now let's give a round of applause to express sincere thanks to all the leaders. Thank you very much. Next is a keynote presentation. Now let's warmly welcome our moderator, Academician Tu Shanzhong from CAS. Let's welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and welcome to the keynote speech session similar with Science-Led Carbon Measurement Revolution, embarking on the path of accurate carbon neutralization. I'm 善东图善东，来自华东理工大学。
I'm Tu Shanzhong. So I'm professor of the East China University of Science and Technology.
Here in this session, Following this session, we will also have a round-the-table discussion. If you have any questions, and probably you can ask during the panel discussion. And firstly, I would like to welcome the Director General and the President Fang Xiang to give us the first lecture. And please join me to extend a warm welcome.
Well, I really feel very honored to be here. And first of all, thank you, the conference chairman. Thank you for giving us this wonderful opportunity. So, Honorable Director Liu, Honorable Chairman Liu, and all the distinguished guests. And my topic today is the solidified measurement of foundation of the dual carbon goal. I would like to cover the following aspects because I have prepared a lot of information. Some information I will skip. So about the carbon measurement background, as you know that to achieve the dual carbon goal is really a national policy, a national goal, and President Xi Jinping paid particular attention to that. So therefore, our government have 1+N plan. One thing I want to mention is, you know that the market supervision administration have relevant policies, especially about carbon measurement. One thing I want to mention here is science and technology, and we really have the carbon measurement. For example, to strengthen the carbon measurement innovation and R&D about the carbon dioxide monitoring system. Especially, we need to provide various kind of the monitoring and verification technologies and services. And there are various policies, especially Shanghai and Guangdong. They have regarded carbon measurement as a very important part of their work. As we know, in this carbon measurement and carbon peak and carbon neutrality in this whole process, the carbon trade and carbon transition is a very important way. In this carbon trading, as we know that the quality of the data is really critical, is a core for the carbon peak and carbon neutrality. Therefore, we need to build up a complete the carbon measurement system, including the calibration on the benchmark, the standard system. Especially, there are uncertainties, for example, methodology and digitalization transformation. We also need to have the transformation of the measurement system. There are also various aspects, and I will not repeat, and maybe other speakers will touch upon all these aspects. For the carbon measurement, the core, actually, you know, this is the international consensus as well as our national strategy. Carbon emission data really is very important. We need to do a very good accounting to check out the inventory. They are playing a very indispensable role in the carbon trading and carbon capture. The measurement is also very important. For example, about the domestic carbon trading, carbon taxation, and the dual carbon strategy. All these cause on the innovation of carbon measurement. This is the background of carbon measurement. Talking about carbon measurement, let's take a look at the measurement development and carbon measurement. Measurement, what is measurement? Measurement is about measuring. It's application of measuring there are four very core aspects. The purpose and to make sure that this measurement is accurate. There are two ways. One is a legal way, another is a scientific way. We have the traceability system. This traceability system will be the fundamental for the accuracy. In this carbon measurement system, like our high-quality development, and we have the quality instrumentation, so as to have the value chain as a UNIDO and also ISO, other international organizations believe that this the measurement metrology is a really important pillar for the future economic sustainable development. On the international arena, there are two very important organizations. One is the International Metrology Association, another is the International Legal Association. We have Wen Nan, who is the chairman of this Metrology Association. It's really very important representative of science and technology. In this international metrology organization, they are playing a very important role for the carbon measurement metrology. One thing I want to mention for the international BIPM, it has signed an agreement with the International Metrology organization. So this International Metrology organization has become one of the members of the BIPM. So to have decades of efforts to have a very accurate the measurement for the carbon, we need to have the international demonstration system, for example, like the traceability chain, etc. You know that for the developed country, whether UK and the EU and also UK, and they have made great efforts to that end. Later on, we have Debbie and from PLL and NPL, and will give us a very detailed presentation. We are very much looking forward to that. Well, for the carbon measurement, carbon metrology, what is difference with the conventional measurement? This is something I want to deliver. For the conventional measurement is carry out a serious activity to make sure that measurement is accurate, effective. It's about measurement tools, instrumentation. We have the calibration to make sure that it is very accurate and comparable. In the carbon measurement system, it's no longer a stand-alone measurement. It's a very complicated open system. It's very obvious to see that if we only rely on traditional instrumentation or flow meter, it's no longer enough. It cannot meet the carbon measurement system requirement. So we need to have the dynamic calibration by the limited measurement and also real-time measurement. For it's very difficult to measure, we need to also have a calibration to have measurement. This is a bigger data-based new measurement system. This is a systematic measurement, like a large sample and also the bigger data-based system. This is I want to deliver the message. So you can see we have a certification, for example, DSI and the DCC and the digital calibration certificate. This will be packaged the carbon measurement system. This will be our future pursuit, and we are making great efforts to this end later on. And we will have Chairman Wen Lan, among the 7 strategic goals. This is a very important goal. This process, if we have some abstraction, we have the counting and also real-time measurement and dynamic calibration, self-calibration. This will be the multiple elements. They will interact with each other to have the carbon emission platform. In the future, the carbon measurement it's no longer a stand-alone system. This will be a systematic, platform-based, and a co-shared data system. There will be very important outcome, namely the data quality. And later on, I will touch upon that. This data quality will have the financial nature. There will be some kind of tradable securities, etc.
And in this way, we can provide authentic certification. This is part 2. In part 3, I will introduce several typical cases at NIM China. I will share 3 cases with you, and they are still in process. And I'd like to use these cases to share some of our explorations with you. First is that with the Chinese test group and some companies in Beijing, we have built a cross-border cargo vessel carbon measurement system. So it is a combination of a counting system and the direct measurement system is MRA. So with the devices of direct measurement in the flight of the cargo vessels, we can measure all the carbon emissions, and with the digital certification. All the data can be sent to the carbon emission platform, and in this way, all the data can be stored and exchanges, and it's in line with the EU carbon emission exchange system, and it's also very helpful for mutual recognition and certification. So what's the result? As you can see, this is a cargo vessel from China to Europe via South Africa. Let's look at the right corner. The yellow line is the measurement, and the blue line is the counting. So as you can see, the trend is consistent. However, in the process of measurement, we have found that the real measurement is 7 to 13% lower than the accounting. If it is 1% decrease, it means a huge amount of money, but it's already 10% in differences. So as you can see in this process, it is clear that accounting method have some errors. So we need to use the real measurement method to have a measurement accurately. And then this is a second case. In the era of big data, data are very important, but data are stored at the data center. And the data center are carbon emitters, very big carbon emitters. So how to realize low carbon or zero carbon at data centers? Carbon measurement plays the key role at NIM China. In these 4 dimensions, we have designed the indicators to formulate a system and this platform. And as you can see, after several years of practices, this year, Director General Hong Liang approved that we should have the digital methodology rules, and this document will be released in 2023, and this work will be done this year, and it's a very important practice for us. I believe that this work is also very important for the international methodology system. The next case is between NIM and Hubei. Hubei Administration for Market Regulation, we have a direct calculation and a measurement of fire plant. So in this case, the core is that we promoted the digital voucher for carbon calculation. The first digital voucher will be released on the 1st December, and it's a full link. And in this way, we can deliver the digital carbon emission certification. So it is a digital way, and with the digital correction certificate, it's a closed loop link, and I think this is very important practices for us. With this, we can guarantee the authenticity of carbon measurement and carbon data. We can also make the carbon trading more real time. In this way, we can support carbon trading. And this case has been supported by many financial departments in China. In part 4, I will briefly introduce NIM China and our practices in carbon measurement. There are many slides here, and I won't introduce them in detail. In fact, in 2015, when President Xi Jinping visited America with NIS, we have signed a collaboration agreement about GHG, and we have set up many teams to have studies and research on greenhouse gases, from the standards, methodology, regulations to international cooperations and mutual certification. And this is the closed loop link that we would like to follow. Then, based on the methodology standard system, first of all, we need to build the GHG scales and material systems that can support the carbon accounting. This is a very important system for us, and this is the first part. Secondly, we also need to develop advanced carbon measurement technology. And thirdly, we also need to evaluate and assess the carbon reduction technology and products. In this process, we have set up many standards covering the traceability, carbon footprint, carbon accounting, carbon sequestration, and non-organizational carbon emission. We have formulated related standards for these 4 areas. And I think, as you can see, this is a carbon scale. We have provide very strong support for carbon scale. And we have upgraded the technology of a carbon scale, and I won't introduce it in detail. And in the international comparison organized by CIPM, we have very good results. All the red circles indicate our work in NIM China, and we are in the first league. Based on that, we have built a traceability system of GHG. Of course, many work should be done in the future. At the same time, we also have a series of standard materials, including the heat value, the composition, etc. I won't introduce them in detail due to time restraint. And in the standard materials, we have two systems. One is a counting system, the other is a direct measurement method. So with these 2 ways, we can combine them all together. And this is a case. As you can see, it can use to measure the components of exhausted gases. And these are some devices developed by us. We also build our own database with NPL. This is our collaboration with NPL, focused on the atmospheric leader, because this technology can solve the problem of monitoring non-organizational emission. And during the Winter Olympics, it played a very important role. Then, when promoting the innovation of technologies and formulating standards, we pay great attention to its application. As you can see, collaborating with institutions, we signed agreements to promote the transferring and application of measurement technologies. Last part, I would like to make a brief conclusion. Centering on my report, I think the first conclusion is that dual carbon goal cannot be achieved without measurement. When achieving the dual carbon goals, many key words are terms of mythology, like what is zero carbon without measurement, what is zero, and what is emission peaking, what is carbon neutrality. I think these words are measurement terms, and if we need to achieve these goals, we need to have a global centralized standards. So this is my first point. Second, accounting system based on measurement is the best system for carbon measurement. I have shared several cases with you. If we want to measure carbon accurately and have fair trading with other countries, data are very important. So, SI and CIPM plays a very important role. Thirdly, digital metrology provides strong support for new system of carbon measurement. Due to time restraint, I can't explain why it's digital metrology. In fact, I have mentioned that carbon is in an open environment. It has multiple points. Some data are traceable, but some indicators and compositions can only be accounted. So in this background, digital metrology is very important. NIM China is carrying forward many works in this regard, and I believe that digital metrology is a very important way and a core method for us to solve carbon measurement and in the near future. So what is the carbon measurement? I believe that to speed up the construction of a carbon measurement technology system is very important. So we need to have comparable data. This data should be recognized in the international community, and in China it should be accurate to provide support for policy making. For all of this, I think measurement is in a very close relationship with the dual carbon goals, and I believe that we can make our special contribution. Thank you. Thank you very much, President Fang, for your keynote speech. Now we know that detection and measurement is a very important support for dual carbon goals. And we know that China is one of the most ancient countries that calls for standardization. For the first emperor in China, Qin Shi Emperor, his science of measurement and his centralized measurement is a very important contribution for China's measurement. And today we've seen great examples and cases from NIM China. I believe that with concerted efforts, China can make more contribution.
The Director and the President Fang, and let's invite Wynand Lower to give us a lecture. Let's welcome. Please.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Ni hao. It's a great pleasure for me to be here and to give you some more information on issues that Director Fang Jian already introduced. So he made my job very easy. Thank you very much. So let's dive into this immediately, and I'm going to really give you just a background of what the International Bureau of Weights and Measures really do, and then talk about the committee, the supervisory organization or the supervisory body of the international organization, the CIPM, what we plan in our strategy 2030 plus. And then talk about the strive towards accurate carbon measurement and what we are also doing in our laboratories and with the NMIs for that and basically to achieve that. So the BIPM, very shortly, is an intergovernmental organization established by the Meter Convention on 20 May 1875, of course, through which member states act together on matters related to measurement science and measurement standards. So we've got the plenary body, the General Conference on Weights and Measures, the CGPM, and that's basically formed by all the countries that have signed the Meter Convention. So they get together in Paris every 4 years, and they basically then implement what the International Committee proposes for the international system of units. I already mentioned that the CIPM is the supervisory body, and we are elected by the General Conference, 18 members to represent the 64 member states. Then we established technical committees, what we call our consultative committees, the CCs, to really coordinate the technical work in each of the technical domains. I'll get to that a little bit later as well. We have our headquarters, our secretariat, and some laboratories then in Paris, a little town, Sèvres, just outside Paris, and I hope that you can visit it. And yes, we call ourselves the home of the International System of Units, the SI. So as I already mentioned, we now have 64 member states and 36 associates. The associates is just like an entry level for smaller countries to start in the system, to join us in the organization, with the idea that they later sign the treaty, the Meter Convention, and become a member state. So it's really a global network to compare measurement standards and ensure their equivalence worldwide, enabling SI traceable measurements. You see the map there on the top left. And basically, it also shows you the coverage of our organization. You see that it's really covering the globe. There are some white areas there in Africa. There are only 13 countries in Africa that officially participate in the BIPM. But we also have regional metrology organizations. You see on the top right, Euramet, the European Association of National Metrology Institutes, the newest one, GulfMet in the Gulf area, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, COMET in the Russian Federation, obviously the very important one for you, the Asia Pacific Metrology Program in green, and then AfriMets in my part of the world, and then the Americas, the SIM. So they also connect the smaller countries that is not yet officially part of the BIPM to the system. So they will actually give traceability within these regional metrology organizations to small countries. I've already spoken about the consultative committees that we have. We've got 10, each chaired by a member of the CIPM. We call them the presidents. So the president of CCU, the units, the president of CCT for thermometry, then we've got CCPR, photometry and radiometry, CCQM, amount of substance, chemistry and biology, CCRI, that I was the president of for many years, ionizing radiation, mass and related quantities, acoustics, ultrasound and vibration, electricity and magnetism, the EM, and then CCTF, time and frequency. And they really coordinate all this technical work. At the moment, Director Fang already explained the comparisons that we do amongst the countries, the members, and we have done 1,133 key comparisons already amongst the countries, the members, and that is then published. The results of that are published in an international key comparison database. We also then make a claim, so NIM will have the key comparison results there, and then they will make a claim and say, from that, we have these calibration and measurement capabilities that is comparable internationally. And then any NMI that needs calibration of, say, the secondary standards can go to the KCDB, they can check the capabilities of NIM and say, yes, I can take my secondary standard there and calibrate it at NIM. And also accredited calibration laboratories check this database to see where can we take our standards to, our measurement standards to calibrate. So that on the left-hand side is just a photograph that I took at the previous CGPM in 2022. I'm there on the podium, basically chairing the meeting, sitting down there, and then we invite the presidents of the consultative committees to give reports. That was the report from chemistry and biology, Dr. Sangryul Park from Korea. On the right-hand side is the main building of our headquarters just outside Paris. That's where our offices are. I'm there for about 2 months a year. The rest of the time, I'm in my country, South Africa. So, but after 2018, I will explain a little bit more just now. The CIPM decided that we really need to look into the future. I've already mentioned that the CIPM is the supervisory body of the BIPM, so we coordinate the scientific work to establish and disseminate the SI, and this includes the coordination of work the NMIs perform in common. So we decide together we will work on this for a better realization of the unit or to establish a unit, and so also then to disseminate the units, the SI, to the communities in our countries. And so after Resolution 1 of the General Conference of 2018, that introduced the revised SI. Before that, as you know, we had like the unit for mass was the kilogram, but the definition of the unit was the mass of the international prototype of the kilogram kept in a vault at the BIPM headquarters. At that time, we changed that in terms of defining constants. So we now defined the kilogram in terms of the Planck constant. We take it into the quantum metrology realm, and now you can realize the kilogram independently anywhere in the world with, at the moment, 3 methods: Keeble-Watt balance, a Joule balance like China has, and then the X-ray crystal density project, or as we say, the Avogadro project. But you can now, anywhere in the world, realize the kilogram independently. But we then realized now we must look into the future. So we decided as the then elected CIPM to start on a strategy development, and the first one is responding to evolving needs for metrology. What is happening in the world? What are the new technologies? What do we need to get ready for? The second one is really the implementation of the revised SI, addressing key scientific challenges. And the third one, a strategy for deepening engagement with other international organizations, simply because we can't do this alone. I'm not going to talk about 4 and 5. It's just to modernize the organization, the governance of the organization. So we already prepared a report in 2022 for the CGPM, really already saying what we think should happen, and they were very happy with it. And they adopted 6 resolutions that basically enable the CIPM now to finish the development of the strategy, publish it, and implement it. So we basically identified main emerging themes. And just the bullets there, digitization of metrology, it was already mentioned, developing metrology to meet the challenge of the digital world then, including systems metrology, large systems, sensor networks, etc., these monitoring networks that was spoken about. And then to explore new areas of metrology such as quantum metrology. And then, of course, we need to look after the evolution of the SI. So we're looking at how to make the coordinated universal time scale continuous. I'm not talking about that today. And also look at future redefinitions of the second and the candela. We will also not talk about that now. But really then to also improve liaison and cooperation with the community at large. And that's all these other international organizations. So we identified 5 metrology grand challenges that we need to consider. You know them all. I just highlighted climate change and the environment there. And the most important thing, we identified cross-cutting challenges related to how we make measurements. Digital transformation, we already mentioned new metrology. And we then decided to establish cross-cutter forums to in future tackle these grand challenges. So these sectorial task groups of the CIPM is to coordinate new possibilities for metrology, to have an impact on global cross-cutting measurement challenges, and they must advise the CIPM and also the BIPM work programs, provide input to our consultative committees, and direct the work of the NMIs as well, and liaise with the regional metrology organization forums and international stakeholder organizations active in the fields. So they will facilitate dialogue, and I think the big important issue is here that previously in our consultative committees, we only invite the NMI experts to participate. In these cross-cutting forums, we can now invite experts from the broad measurement community, like, for example, some T experts as well. We don't only stay with the NMIs, and I think it's a tremendously good development. Director Fang Jiang already mentioned the digital framework, and we established the digitalization framework in 2023. And they must now really advise us on the levels of digitalization and what we can ask the NMIs to also participate in. We're really busy with level 1 and 2, so we're digitalizing all the documents, including the SI brochure. And then we're working on machine-readable documents, and to make the KCDB, for example, machine-readable. The next phase will be that level 3, 4, and 5, machine actionable. But that is for the future. We're now working with the other organizations. And mentioning the other organizations, there they are. I'm not going to read through them, but we've signed a joint statement on digitalization with all those, and most importantly, perhaps, the International Organization for Legal Metrology. And I must say the BIPM and the OIML are working together closer and closer, and that's a very good thing. Just very quickly, what we also do as the CIPM, we can add to the SI. And at the recent conference for big data, we added new multiplying factors, like the RONA for 10 to the 27, and the QETA for 10 to the 30, and also the 10 to the minus, the submultiples, 10 to the minus 27, the RONTO, and 10 to the minus 30, the QECTO. So you can now officially use them as RONA meters or RONA bytes, and so on. But let's now really get to what we do at the Organization for Climate Action and Zero Carbon Measurement. And The BIPM is closely working with the World Meteorological Organization, and we had a workshop on metrology for climate action and identified over 100 actions to progress measurement science in support of climate action, including those related to accuracy requirements for atmospheric composition measurements across economic sectors and temporal and spatial scales that was already mentioned. And this included the following recommendations for governments to improve the quantification of urban or sector level emissions. There's an urgent need for increased monitoring of atmospheric CO2 at all spatial scales. The current global network for monitoring trends in greenhouse gases, the Global Atmospheric Watch GAW, consists of about 141 stations for carbon dioxide, 123 for methane, and 49 for N2O. And this network is coordinated by the WMO and provides data that demonstrates a growing concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. It relies on having the monitoring sites in remote locations to assess well-mixed background amount fractions. And so for each of these measured gases, the GAW or the WMO will actually nominate a central calibration laboratory that gets their traceability from the NMIs like NIM to basically ensure traceability of those measurements. So measurements in the global network include amount fractions of the major greenhouse gases, including carbon dioxide and methane, as well as their isotope ratios. These are performed at levels of precision that can identify long-term trends, annual cycles, and also changes in these that can be linked to global processes. So the isotope ratio measurements provide information on the sources of gases, including whether these are from anthropogenic processes, with carbon dioxide containing less carbon-13, of course, being linked to fossil fuel combustion, for example. So we're really developing the measurement capabilities to do these things. And then the determination of trends of greenhouse gases requires highly precise measurements with monitoring networks with required performance characteristics defined by compatibility goals defined by the WMO-GAW. And the compatibility goal is the maximum level of difference that can be permitted between monitoring stations. The value for carbon dioxide, for example, is 0.1 micromole per mole, which can be compared to the uncertainty of primary standards of carbon dioxide in air, which has similar magnitudes. This would mean that using different primary standards in a network would lead to larger differences that would be acceptable. And that is where we then get to this point of establishing those single scales, that we can all get traceability to those single scales. And in that way, we will actually be able to meet the accuracy requirements. So this year, the WMO has announced an initiative to put in place a new global network to provide integrated global greenhouse gas observing system with near real-time international exchange of all observations. The focus is currently on carbon dioxide, methane, and N2O fluxes at about a resolution of 1,000 by 1,000 meters. The design of such a system is now in development, but will require an expansion of the number of monitoring sites worldwide, noting that the World Weather Watch network is based on a 2 orders of magnitude greater density of monitoring sites. So if we can put this in place now for these gases, we will greatly improve the monitoring capability, but of course create a large amount of big data, and that we need technologies such as digitalization and AI to assist us to interpret this data. So the development of national networks to verify carbon emissions within countries will provide an additional requirement for standards. The example shown in the slide represents plans to extend the greenhouse gas monitoring network in South Korea with potentially over 100 monitoring stations and with scale standards to be developed by CRIS, the NMI of Korea, over the 5 years. The challenge will be to ensure the standards are comparable with those used in the WMO network and other NMIs, and this will be addressed through the comparisons run at the BIPM headquarters laboratories. So a series of on-demand comparisons for carbon dioxide in air standards has been under design in the last years at the BIPM in cooperation with the NMIs, and the facilities at the BIPM will allow the World Standard Institutes to ensure equivalence of these standards based on the SI system, that top BIPM KMK2 comparison, and to determine relationships between their scale standards, that K5 comparison, to be able to report on a common standard as required by the atmospheric monitoring community within networks of the WMO. So the data scale from the scale comparisons will be used by the global monitoring community and will need to be freely accessible and follow fair data principles. This is how we say that the data, the digital data, must be findable, accessible, and so on. So a program to develop a database for the BIPM scale comparisons is being initiated this month with experts from the WMO Central Calibration Laboratory and will enable those modeling greenhouse gas emission to ensure their observational data is available on a common scale with well-defined uncertainties and meeting network compatibility goals. Think about my second last slide. The activities at the BIPM and NMIs has advanced rapidly in the last years, as you heard as well from Nim. And several NMIs are already planning to disseminate both carbon dioxide and methane scale standards in the next years to meet increased demand for such networks. Ongoing comparisons at the BIPM headquarters laboratories will ensure long-term equivalence of these standards. So the work on standards at the BIPM headquarters and NMIs is being coordinated by two task groups of our CCQM, our Consultative Committee for Amount of Substance, and the committee that coordinates works on chemical standards within the BIPM system. And if you need further information on this, you can go to the BIPM website, www.bipm.org, but I'm sure some of the speakers later will also give more information on that. So the clock says I've got 22 seconds left, and that's just enough time to say the CIPM, our team that were elected in 2022 and took office in 2023, and we will be there until 2027, wishes you well and wishes China well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wayland Lau, for excellent and inspiring lecture. And we know that this carbon measurement is a global business, and we lead a joint effort of different countries and organizations. And CIPN surely is a very good example, and we hope that we can work together more in the future, and I hope that it can come to China many times in the future also. Thank you very much once again. And next, I would like to invite Professor David Zieberman to give us his lecture. Let's welcome.
Okay, it's a big thank you. It's quite an honor and a pleasure to give this talk. I am an economist from the University of California, Berkeley. I work on problems of the environment, on issues of climate change, issue of environmental pollution. And my lecture will cover the way that economists think about measurement and the role of incentive and policies to achieve measurement. Now, you cannot really deal with a problem like climate change without precise measurement, and a lot of times the parties that are involved in dealing with climate change, people that generate greenhouse gases, don't necessarily want you to measure them very well, so this is a big challenge, and you really have to take into account human behavior when you design different type of procedures. So first, let me speak a little bit about what we know about the impact of climate change, and then how we can measure it. So there are several types of impact, and each of them depend on different, can be measured and is different. So the one thing that climate change will do, it will change the climate. So a lot of the climate that today is close to the equator will move towards the pole, so we'll have higher temperature. Sea level will rise and area along the shores will suffer. We will have a lot of increased snowmelt and flooding. There will be a lot of damage for ecosystem and an increased probability of extreme events. So to some extent, climate change, different locations will have different impact, and a lot of this impact are stochastics. Now, what do we need to know? We need to know the impact of greenhouse gas concentration, how they affect the climate, how they affect snowmelt, probabilities, increase event. We need to know the impact on human health, agricultural population, and immigration. These are big issues we need to know. We need to know levels of emission. We need to measure sequestration. A lot of time we would like to pay people to sequester carbon. And a big challenge is to link emission and sequestration to the resources. What do I mean? You have an emission of carbon at a certain place, you see that there is some carbon, but who caused it? That's a huge problem, because to know that there is carbon in the atmosphere is not enough. You need to know what is the source. Similarly, suddenly there are some sequestration. Who did it? How you do it? How you measure it? And this is a big problem. So to some extent, you need to have information in order to design and implement policies. Now, as an economist, I don't believe that you will do anything about carbon unless you have some policies. They can be carbon taxes or tradable permits or direct control or regulations that tell you, gosh, you cannot do a certain place, you have to limit your amount of carbon emission. Policies like investment and research and development a lot of time will affect climate change. But in order to develop policies, you need to have information and you need political will. But the two are related. If you have good information, you have more political will. You don't have good information, political will doesn't help because people know that they cannot rely on you. So the politics of carbon sequestration and carbon management depend on good information. So what do we? So when we need to develop regulation, we have several challenges. The first, you need to have a good measurement to know who emits, what is the source, how much do they emit, and when. And also, in the case of sequestration, we need to identify linkages. What do I mean that we need to identify linkages? A lot of companies, for example, suggest that they can store carbon underground. But can we be sure that it will be stored forever? There may be a lot of linkages. So the challenge of measurement are really, really big, and it will take a long time to get it. And it's a huge scientific problem, but it's also have a lot of economic opportunity. To me, if someone develops reliable measurements that are effective and they can work under different dimensions, it will be a good source. It can result in a new industry, and it will be crucial for the development of carbon. As I said before, you need to look at measurement of emission, measurement of sequestration, and you need the capacity to deal with linkages. Now, generally, when you look at issues of pollution, then that's what I did a lot of work, you have to separate between point source pollution and non-point source pollution. Now, point source pollution are sources where you know who is the emitter and you can measure the emitter. For example, pipes, stacks that relate to power plant. So when you have, so to some extent, when you have a good system of piping, you can measure, you can measure what's going on. Similarly, when you sequester, if you know exactly who's doing the sequestration and you can measure the amount that you sequester, then you have a good situation, and it's an easy situation. So to me, first we need to develop a good system for source point pollution. But in many cases, most of the pollution are non-point source. If you look at the city and you see, for example, emission of carbon from cooking, you don't know where it's coming from. If you look at agriculture and you have emission from farming of, let's say, of methane, again, you don't know where is it coming from. So it's very, very difficult to identify what is the source of air pollution, of sewage, of methane, and that is, to me, one of the biggest problems that you can do. Now, the one thing that is clear that the definition of non-point versus point depend on technology. As to me, that one of the biggest challenges is to increase the amount of measurement that you have throughout the economy. So, for example, if you develop technology that you can measure at every farm or in every house or in every other opportunities how much carbon is linked, that will be great. If you can ever look at the energy system and you try to look at how much energy is moving from one place to another and how much energy people are using in cooking or industrial production, that is great. But still, almost all over the world, the amount of monitoring that we have is very, very difficult. It's very small. And one of the biggest challenges is to increase monitoring worldwide. Even in the US, Europe, China, monitoring is not ideal. Look at the developing world. Without ability to monitor, so to some extent, there is a huge challenge to introduce monitoring equipment all over the world. You know, so to some extent, you really need to try to think about a mechanism to do it. Now, the good thing is that what happened in the last 20 or 30 years, that we have a lot of mechanism to identify monitoring. You can identify monitoring not by direct measurement on the production unit, but you can identify monitoring through satellites, through drone, through nanotechnology that can basically, you have a little nano unit that are moving all over that can monitor action over space and time. Chemical and biological traceability are improving. And the cost of monitoring technology depend on how much the technology costs, how reliable it is, how much privacy you have, and what type of regulation you have. If you have regulation that you enforce and they are tough, you can introduce monitoring technology. If people know that, that if you use monitoring technology, you will be penalized, or the penalty for non-monitoring is low, then people won't adopt it. So monitoring technology depends on policy. Now, one of the big issues is to attribute emission in cases of non-point pollution. In many cases, it's very difficult to measure the amount of greenhouse gas emission from a certain source. But a lot of times, there are some variables that are correlated with the greenhouse gas emission. For example, when you emit carbon from a car, it's very difficult to measure how much carbon you emit, but you can measure how much gasoline you have. So to some extent, you can basically develop some sort of a tax on gasoline that will be based on the relationship between gasoline and emission. Or a lot of time you can relate the emission, how much gasoline you have, and what type of equipment you use. When you look at animal emissions, that is methane, you can, again, develop mechanisms that you tell you how many animals you have, what type of facility you have, where do you feed them, and you can develop a formula to do it. That was in my dissertation, is developing measure of pollution, not by measuring the carbon, but measuring something that are available. And therefore, a lot of time it's important, if you cannot measure the pollution, to identify sources of information that can help you to measure the pollution. So a lot of time, if you are an agency that measures pollution, and in agriculture you need to know how many cows they have, how much they consume, what do they produce, and you can develop an indirect measure. You can develop a measurement of emission based on transportation and on car. Now, there is so to some extent, there is a challenge of precise monitoring, and to some extent it will change over time, because to me, developing science of monitoring and measurement is something that is continuous. So people would like to have permanent solution, but to some extent it's very difficult. Every 3 or 4 years we will develop new solution as science is developing. And we need all the time to think about the fact that we need to have some resources from investment in big monitoring. Now, a lot of time you really have a problem that you have a new monitoring technology and it's costly, people will adopt it. How would you induce people to adopt monitoring technology? This is a very important problem, but I think that there are some mechanisms to do it. So suppose you have two technologies that you can monitoring how much someone emit, how much pollution someone emit. You can have a device that measures how much carbon you emit, or you'd have a traditional technology that doesn't know how much carbon you emit, but look, for example, what type of machinery you operate, and you assume that you emit the average amount that is emitted by this machinery. So what you tell someone is, either you adopt a new technology, or you pay taxes, or you pay any regulation based on the performance of the traditional technology that you have. By doing something like this, people that adopt new technology and they know that they are less polluting will have the incentive to adopt the technology. So all the time, you have to give people two systems: adopt the new technology and benefit from more accurate measurement, or keep with the old technology and eventually will be penalized. This type of approach that you all the time tell people, stay with the old technology and pay a lot, adopt the new technology and pay less, will help you to motivate people to adopt new technologies for monitoring. Because to me, one of the biggest challenges that in many cases you need people to adopt the new measurement technology in order to get good results. Now, at the same time, you need to develop industry to develop new technology. So you need to have patents, you need to have research and development, and in academia, development, measurement of technology is not emphasized very much, because a lot of time people don't use this type of technology, and because a lot of times there is an attempt to avoid it. So we need to invest in research and development in technology. We need to invest to encourage people to develop supply chain, to develop this technology, and people know that once this technology will be available, the government or other agencies will use it. So to some extent, you need to invest in new technology and in research to develop new technology to have better measurement. Now, so in many cases, because a lot of time people don't measure and people try to avoid measurement, the incentive to private industry to develop new technology is lacking. There is a need to subsidize research in monitoring technology, and even to subsidize the beginning of an industry that produces new monitoring technology, because once this technology will be introduced and people will basically be penalized if they don't use the technology, they will adopting. Now, the other thing that we need is we need to have global cooperation. Because when it comes to climate, climate does not geography. When it comes to climate, that's number one. So a lot of time we need to be able to identify when emission move from one area to another, who caused the emission. The other thing that we need to have a collaboration is that if you have a new technology in one country, you need to have technology transfer so other countries can use it. Not all the countries can develop this new technology. So you need to develop a mechanism that monitoring technology can move from one country to another without a lot of cost, because climate change is a global problem. Now, the other thing is, while I up to now spoke about micro-level activities on adoption of technology at the micro-level, we need to have macro-level activities. We need to have measurement of emission at the macro level, and I know that this is something that are working, but when I speak about the macro level, I don't speak about the country, I speak about the region, about the city or another area, in order that we make sure that our micro level and the aggregate amount are somehow coordinated. If you basically tax individuals, or if you measure pollution from individuals, you want to make sure that the aggregate level that you have is based on meet with more or less the total of number that the individuals are producing. So we need to have two parallel measurements. Individual measurement in order to make people accountable, and aggregate measurement, first of all, in order to make country and regions accountable, but most importantly, in order to know that we are really operating well, that our numbers and our calculations are such that there is consistent between what we measure from individual level than what we measure at the aggregate. Another problem that we have to deal with is leakages. And especially this is a lot of time a problem that is associated with sequestration. We have to recognize that a lot of time you may have an assumption that, that you measure emissions, but sometimes you may overestimate emission or underestimate emission because there may be leakages. So you always have to recognize what are the problems of the system. One example is methane. A lot of times there are leakages in pipelines, so you need to have a system to identify leakages as you go. Now, so altogether, this is a really big challenge. It's a big challenge that requires a lot of economic incentive in many ways. The number one economic incentive, you need to develop penalties or taxation or subsidies or economic incentive to reduce pollution. If there are no economic incentive to reduce pollution, no one will develop it. You need to develop incentive to develop a measurement technology that is very precise. Without measurement, we wouldn't be able to deal with climate change. The development of the industry to develop measurement and introducing of policy is a dynamic process, but we need to start now. The other thing that we have to do, we have to reduce the number of non-point solution, pollution, and to increase the number of pollution activities that we are getting engaged. And finally, we need two key elements: public investment in research and development, and international collaboration, so we can cover as many countries and reduce emission globally. And I think that, to me, this is a big challenge, but as humanity, we'll be able to meet it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor David Zielman. Please take your seat. This is a wonderful lecture. And to accurately measure the carbon and the greenhouse emission, we need to know when, where, and how to measure it. I think Professor David Zielman gave us a very broad knowledge. And we need to develop the advanced technology, and at the same time, we have to promote the technology transfer. And in this regard, the government and the public engagement is very much important. Once again, thank you very much.
Okay, so next is academician of CAE, Liu Wenqing. to make a presentation. So yeah, is really the forefather and expert for the carbon emission, the measurement. Now let's warmly welcome academician Liu.
Think I will give this talk in English since so many Chinese colleagues here. Anyway, you have a translator, you can. So, 我觉得我们都
Well, actually, we are so many Chinese, so I would like to speak Chinese. They will be better. Okay, you have the translation, no problem. You know that we are going to talk about the progress application of hyperspectrum detection of atmospheric environment. We know that these measurement technologies are very important for us to cope with climate change. The measurement technology and instruments are really important. We need to monitor the climate. As you know that the Beauty China, this is our national policy. And this is really from the connotation and the concept and application. Ever since the 20th CPC Congress, we need to build up a harmonious society and a sound ecosystem. There are 4 parts. So the critical issue is the very sound ecosystem. And also for the health environment. Health environment is also very important foundation for the people's survival and development. For example, like UN conference about the environment and health planet and health people. By 2019, there has been 244 environment documentations issued by WHO. So we live in the environment. It's closely related to the climate change, the air quality, and the second, climate change. These 2 are very important. The pollution and the climate change are also 2 very fundamental issues for the eco-civilization in China. We believe that the environment is also foundation for the green, low-carbon development. We need the measurement technology. These measurement technologies are very important driver for the green and low-carbon development in China. It's about the monitoring evaluation. Because we are focusing on the measurement technology, whether the pollution, gas or air, or the warming air or greenhouse gas, they are all the gas or air. They have the same source, whether cutting emission or addressing the greenhouse gas. They are quite similar. However, to the measurement, they are totally different. For example, for these pollution airs, they are in the visible air, and for the greenhouse gas, it's in the infrared spectrum. And therefore, they are totally different detectors or sensors. First is about sensibility. As you know that over many years, you see, for the CO2, and from the 300 ppm to 400 ppm every year there is an increase. And you want to check out the monthly variation, you must have the minimal sensitivity should be 0.08 ppm. So if you want to do the measurement, it must be more accurate. For the atmosphere gas, these pollution gas will be absorbed in the atmosphere. How to measure that? The sensitivity is also very key. For the pollution air, the sensitivity may be not so high, maybe 0.5 will be enough. But for the greenhouse gas, it's in the infrared spectrum. You should be only lower than 0.2 nanometer will be not interfered by other gas. These are 2 major challenges. We are from the optical technology and has been applied in many fields. I will talk about their application in the environment area.
So it uses light waves and interaction with materials. So no matter its absorption or its Raman or its scattering, it's still the essence. So first of all, for the infrared spectrum, we've used the scattering. Of course, now we have some high-resolution spectrum technology, which we are going to advance in the near future. The next tool is algorithm. If you only have hardware, it's not enough. How can you differentiate them accurately? Just as President Fang has mentioned, we are going to build absorption devices for absorption, and I think we can have some collaboration in this regard. With that, we can differentiate different spectrums. So our team, together with some colleagues in China, in the past decade, developed a series of hyperspectrum 3D monitoring technologies, and it's widely applied due to time restraint. I can't introduce them in detail. I will focus on the application of satellite remote sensing, air polluting, and GHG monitoring. If there is a device on ground receive the light from different angles, then we can understand the space distribution of pollutants. So in China, there is an official website to discuss the transportation of pollutants among different cities, and it is also provide a high precision for the satellites. So in this spectrum, we can analyze over 30 different gases, and this is the coking plant. You can't see the plume, but with our devices, you can see the components of this plume. We have conducted many practices for different companies. The next is a LiDAR. We have so many different LiDARs, which is widely used in the automobile, and now with the flux detection LiDAR, we can measure the particles fluxes. We can understand the three-dimension distribution. We can also calculate PM 2.5 and PM 10. And we can also understand how many are fluxed into this community, and I think this is easier. But the hard thing is that how to detect the trace atmospheric, because it's used DIAL. We need to have two precise LiDAR wavelengths, and then we calculate the difference of these two light waves, and in this way we can understand the accurate. So from OPO, gas Raman and the solid state Raman. This is one of our development. This is DIAL LiDAR for atmospheric ozones. So in the future, we hope to use it at the satellite platform. With the LiDAR's data, we can understand how the pollutants is transported, because the simulation may have some error, but it's different. The next is GHG flux LiDAR. If you select a light wave like 2.0, then you can precisely measure the vertical distribution of GHG. And then with the wind, you can understand the emission of GHG. This is a comparison. We compared it with on-the-ground monitoring. In the night, it's higher, and during daytime it's lower. And at the same time, you can see that there is a fire in this community. Then you can see the scattering is very high, and you will also know how much the scattering is. And the monitoring of GHG nowadays in the world, many is for the industry parks, cities, and these are the different levels, and we hope to reduce the carbon emission. Normally, most on-site monitoring use the optical technology. And on the science island at our institute, we have built the first TCON, which is Total Carbon Column Observing Network. And TCON, this is already a standard TCON standard station, and we hope that we can have more collaboration with NIM China in terms of formulating and comparing international standards altogether. For example, At Hefei station, we observe the real-time carbon dioxide and its changes. And then at China station, it can provide the calibration and validation of GOSAT and OCO. We can understand the differentiation of the carbon dioxide volume. We've also used the Fourier technology and developed many open optical technology. This is the case in a company in Hebei to monitor some leakage. As one of the speakers said, leakage is a severe issue. If it just leaked 1% each year, it won't protect the environment at all. So this is applied in an industrial park in Hebei. Currently, we also have some vehicle-mounted greenhouse monitoring gases. So this device is on the vehicle, then we can understand the emission of the whole industry park. We have compared the industry park, the power generation, as well as the wetland park. Some people may think the emission in wetland park is very low. However, yes, the power plant has the highest emission, but industrial park has lower emission than wetland park. So this is carbon peaking and carbon neutrality assessment system. We need the data from the ground, from the satellite, and the data should be real time. And we also need to have a system for data inversion. And in this way, otherwise we can't understand the carbon emission, and it is an integrated system. And from the side of a satellite, we know that it can provide precise information. But at the global dimension, satellite is the only way to understand the pollutant condition. So this is why we've used a Gaofeng 5 satellite. We also researched an algorithm for it to understand the global distribution of carbon dioxide and ozone. And in 2021, 2022, the Gaofeng 5 and Dachi 1 has been launched. And on them, there are LIDAR. Now you can see the difference. One is in the morning, the other is in the afternoon. Then we can understand in this duration the emission of each component. And we have also compared it with the European data, and its correlation is over 90%. So it means that we can use Chinese satellite data to solve Chinese problems, because we can have real data from Chinese satellites. The next is a global atmospheric carbon dioxide satellite survey. The first 10-sat was launched in China, and this is the third satellite after America and Japan. We have developed some algorithm and models. Now, the quality of the product is very similar to OCO. It's basically the same. And then in 2021 and 2022, we've launched the world's first satellite equipped with carbon dioxide LIDAR. And for the first time in the world, we can have high precision bipolar data. Now, if you don't use the LIDAR, you can only have the data from the daytime. But with this satellite, we can monitor the conditions in night. We have also compared it with some international sites. As you can see, the correlation is over 95%. So now, currently, we plan that during the 14th five-year plan, we may launch several satellites to detect other GHGs with higher precision and resolution. According to the development, you may know that. Sorry, I can't showcase the picture of a satellite. We can't use one technology to detect the trace gases, because on each platform has its own pros and cons. So we need to develop precise technologies at a greater scale that can detect more components. Otherwise, we can't meet the monitoring of GHG. And in this regard, I think from the technologies itself, we need international cooperation, and we hope to conduct more international collaboration and collaborative research. And I think it's a precision calculation and the measurement of the trace gases. And we still have a long way to go, and I welcome you to pay a visit on our Science Island for partnership. Thank you. Thank you very much, Academician Liu, for this informative presentation. He made great contribution to atmospheric environment, atmospheric monitoring, and autonomous R&D. Today, he cited several examples. And for the future, he mentioned that we are going to build intelligent, multi-dimensional monitoring for the atmosphere, and I think this is a very clear direction for us. Next,
Richard Buckle from National Physical Laboratory UK to give us a lecture. Welcome. Richard, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So, as a meteorologist focused on this problem of climate, I've learned that what we want to measure and what we can measure are not the same thing. And this is because we're dealing with a very complex systems problem. We have a complex system of nature, and we also have a complex system of society. So when I look at this term carbon neutrality, it's with this kind of systems context that I consider the term. And it's a very straightforward term, really. It suggests that the net emissions flux is zero, so the sources and sinks cancel each other out. And it is this kind of straightforwardness which is why it's so commonly used, as it's a very kind of understandable and clear target for society to aim for. However, in the context of the broader climate challenge, I think we need to be a little bit cautious in how we use this term, and let me explain a little bit why. The first thing is that actually it's very difficult to assess carbon neutrality at anything other than the systems level. And in David's speech, I heard a few references there that pick up on this problem. So if you're a company or an organization and you've tried to engage in understanding your Scope 3 emissions and you've tried to tackle life cycle analysis, you will start to appreciate some of the challenges of understanding at your particular level where might carbon neutrality be. But actually, I think the main challenge that we need to think about is that the goal doesn't really tell the whole story. So let's have a little look into why that might be. So this should be a relatively familiar chart from the IPCC. And what it shows is that there's a strong correlation between the atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide and temperature. So this climate problem we're dealing with is all about temperature, and it is at the atmospheric concentrations that is what's correlated to that. And so therefore, when we talk about the term carbon neutrality, what we are trying to do is use it to frame how do we manage atmospheric carbon concentrations. So let's have a little look at this very simple diagram from the IPCC. In this diagram, you can see we have a temperature target here, which since the Paris Agreement, we've had this, I guess, stretch target of 1.5 degrees, but 2 is really the kind of critical limit. And we have this thick red line here, which is showing what we can measure in terms of global temperature rise. And we also see, if I can get the dotted line here, is our prediction. And you'll notice the prediction includes an overshoot. So I think we already understand that to try and hit that target directly is probably beyond what we're able to do. If we look at the black line here, these are the total global emissions as reported, I should add, rather than measured. And we reach an emissions peak, and then we can see some rapid decarbonisation until we hit carbon neutrality. And then we have to enter into the negative emissions territory. So carbon neutrality here is a very clear deadline, but also, if you noticed here, it's on a timeline. So time is something that we have to consider when we think about carbon neutrality, and which is why often the date 2050 is mentioned when you talk about carbon neutrality or net zero. But picking that date was not easy. I know there was a lot of discussion, and it was probably a consensus vote because there's many factors at play here. So let's explore some of these factors, or at least two of them. The first one I want to look at is part of the societal system. And here we have two different progress profiles. The first one on the left here is a scenario where we have rapid decarbonisation, and then we slow as we get to the more difficult areas of our economies to decarbonise. Okay? And this is probably, certainly from a scientific perspective, the most logical and comfortable position to be in, because if you look at the area under the curve here, we minimize the cumulative emissions. So it's those cumulative emissions that are obviously contributing to the atmospheric concentrations. Alternatively, we could look at the right here, where we look at our net emissions flux, and we make very slow progress at first, and then we accelerate that decarbonisation later. The area here under the curve is much, much bigger. And so what that means is if that approach is taken, then probably the point at which we need to reach carbon neutrality is earlier. And there's also a question, of course, because it's in human nature for us to tackle the easiest things first. So the question is it plausible that we can accelerate like that in the later stages? And perhaps one response I could give to that is to say, look at the innovation scene, where often innovations start slowly, and then they can rapidly accelerate. The internet and the mobile phone is probably a good example of this. I will leave you to consider which of these scenarios is most likely. But I suspect by the time the COP happens later this year, there will be a consensus on the path that we think are on and how it may need to evolve as we move forward. So we've looked at one of the societal factors. Now let's look at nature. This is a diagram from the Global Carbon Budget, and what it tries to do here is summarize the principal fluxes. And so you'll see these large areas here are all what you might call the anthropogenic fluxes. And these rather surprisingly smaller arrows, but if you look at the number, far bigger fluxes is nature. And so what we see is the anthropogenic fluxes are just a fraction of the natural world. But also, if you look at the size of these circles here, these represent the carbon stores. So we see our gas reserves, we see oil reserves, coal reserves, and then we start looking to nature and things like the ocean. So the carbon stores in nature are huge in comparison. What this means is we do need to think about this natural system, because if something changes there, it will change the whole game for us. Okay? So again, this is something to think about when we're talking about carbon neutrality. And of course, why would it change the game? Because of tipping points. So these have been discussed at length internationally, and I think it's a very challenging area. Tipping points involve very interrelated systems. In our Earth, there are many things that are acting as positive feedback loops and negative feedback loops, and it's very, very difficult to predict. But we do know if something does change here, then we do have a different problem to deal with. And I guess that's where some of the context for reaching carbon neutrality comes in. How long do we have before nature starts to respond? So just briefly then, when I look at carbon neutrality, I look at it in the context, and I've listed some other areas here that influence how we might think about carbon neutrality, and I haven't got time to cover them all, but some of them are very challenging areas. If we take manageable overshoot, how well do we think we can manage that overshoot in the future? Or climate inertia, this is a very big question. So we know if we stop all emissions now, the climate has an inertia and temperatures will keep rising. How long will it take to reach an equilibrium state is still a question for debate. So let's now move on a little bit. So having established carbon neutrality on its own is perhaps not such a simple concept when we look at the problem we're trying to solve. So achieving carbon neutrality, I guess the point I'm making here, isn't necessarily solving the problem. So let's look a little bit more at the kind of actions. And this is now an old diagram. It's called a Sankey diagram. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, and it outlines how particular sectors and the end uses associated with those sectors contribute to our greenhouse gas emissions. And you can see that the energy system represents about 70% of the emissions, and non-energy represents about 30%. And in general, I think we've got a good handle on the energy side of it. It's where we're making most progress. I think as you start to move to the non-energy systems, the challenges start getting more significant, and I think the role of measurement becomes much more important in these areas. Because referring back to David's presentation, it's very hard to link some of these activities, such as agriculture, to economic data. And the way we report emissions now is very much driven by economic data. So there are some gaps here that measurement needs to fill. But of course, the aim here, in theory, is to reduce our emissions down to zero, our net emissions down to zero in terms of carbon neutrality. And this is immensely challenging as a systems problem, and I'm not even going to attempt to try and suggest how you might do it. But what I would say is you can find throughout the internet, and I've chosen an example here from the UK, of a carbon calculator. And so these carbon calculators are a simplification, but actually I recommend that they're well worth having a play with, because it allows you to start looking at some of these factors that we need to address to achieve carbon neutrality, to see the interrelationships, the dependencies, and actually how difficult it really is. It's really hard to find a shortcut. And there are countless scenarios for how we achieve this. And again, I think this is a very important role for measurement. I think I heard in the last speech about needing real time, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think if there's one thing I've learned about systems problems, is you need a feedback loop, because you can't predict how it responds. Yeah? So you need that feedback loop to guide you on your journey, because a certain amount of the solution will emerge. It's not something that we can plan right now. Now, this is obviously a simplification. Again, and I apologize for referring to the UK, but it's the country I know the most. A report was done a few years ago now called Absolute Zero. And this tried to, rather than look at it at a generic level, specifically look, how would the UK achieve carbon neutrality? But it put some further constraints on it. because what this report said is we don't want any lateral emissions or exporting of emissions, and we don't want carbon capture. So, and it's a scenario to look at. And when you look at the scenario for an entity such as the UK to be carbon neutral, you start to get into some very challenging outcomes. And I'm not going to go through all of this here, but let me point out flying and shipping. What this report says is without a sharing of emissions, without carbon capture, all airports must close. All shipping declines to zero. Okay? Clearly, that isn't viable, but that gives you an idea of the seriousness of just reaching net zero. Of course, what this says is we need negative emissions opportunities. And there are many options. Some of them I've listed here. Some of them are harnessing nature. Some of them are very technological. But there are some big questions around some of these. And I think, again, David, in your presentation, you alluded to this, which is, if we're going to store carbon, how long do we need to store it for it to really make a difference? And there's an argument that says, given our anthropogenic activity has disturbed a carbon cycle that works on geological timescales, then it might be a good assumption to say that carbon capture solutions also have to work on a geological timescales. And we've never been able to think about that before. How do we devise and create and assure technologies that will exist for many, many generations beyond us? Okay, so this is quite a challenge, and it needs a fair amount of innovation, I'm sure. So just returning, carbon neutrality, I think, is a good term. It's a clear term. It's easy for society to understand. It's an important concept, and it is a good target. But the context around it tells you there's no guarantees from carbon neutrality in itself. We have to think about how we get to carbon neutrality, and we have to think about how nature, the natural system around us, might respond to some of the changes that is inevitable that we're going to feel even in the next few decades. And so really, if I was to leave you with one word that I would like to associate with carbon neutrality, it's time. Yeah. It's not about achieving, it's about achieving carbon neutrality in the right way, in the right time. Because going back to the start of my conversation, carbon neutrality doesn't solve the climate challenge. The cumulative atmospheric emissions do. And that's why time is so important for carbon neutrality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very much an excellent lecture. I know the National Physical Laboratory has contributed very significantly to the testing and the measurement. I really hope that we can continue to cooperate in the future. And we have, in this invited lecture session, the final one, 下面是我们
was the last speaker, last keynote speaker is Duan Mao Sheng. Let's welcome Professor Duan. Let's welcome.
Thank you for your invitation. It's my great pleasure to discuss the data, how to collect GHG data, because emission data are very important. We have so many different measures and devices. Of course, data are very important. But when discussing data, its data at different levels. National data, regional data, we should set an ambitious and feasible target. Then we need national data, regional data. We hope that all different industries can make their efforts. Then we need data at the industry level. Then we need companies to make efforts. Then we need data at the company level. We have so many different policies and ways to reduce target, but most of them are specific to products. Then we need data at the product level about product design. Data are very important. When setting the objectives, we need to evaluate its impacts on social economy and its significance. Then we need to evaluate the objectives regularly to see if we are at the right trajectory and any gap. As we all know, according to the Paris protocol, we have the very first global inventory to see each country's efforts. So in this way, it can guide the setting of temperature reduction for each country. So it's the same for a region. We need to evaluate the objective. We have carbon taxing. Then we need to see if the allowance is appropriate, if the taxation rate is appropriate. Then we need all kinds of data to support it. However, we discuss emission data all the time, but the definition for data and the level for data are totally different. IPCC have the data at the national level. You can use method 1, method 2, or method 3, and it's at the macro level. For example, the energy consumption data, it is calculated by a formula. You can have a default emission factor, and you can have your own emission factor of your country. So generally speaking, it's a calculation at the macro level. Then we also have some sub-national data. Then some department will have guidance for this region, which is very similar to the IPCC guidance, and it's also similar in industries. Once at the company level, then you will find that the emission data are totally different from the data at the national level, regional level, and industry level. Previously, when discussing data at the national level, it's calculated, it's not measured, but at the company level, the direct measurement is foreseeable. So you have two options. Option 1, according to your fuel consumption, you can figure out your emission. Option 2, at the outlet, you can install the SIMS system, then you can monitor the emission. There are so many different ways, like LEADER, to conduct the monitoring. In China, no matter it's nationwide or in some pilot cities, now we have the pilots for carbon emission trading system. And now the accounting plays a major role, but we keep discussing to see if we should allow companies to use SIMS. At the international level, there are different options. In Europe, 2 ways are allowed and available, and for different industries, there are different requirements. While in California, America, some industries must take SIMS. So in different systems and in different countries, there are different requirements for the measurement. If we take a closer look at a product or a production line of a product, then you will see that the accounting rules are very similar at the company level, but they have their own uniqueness. For example, like the coal industry covers from the coking and to the very last step, the whole chain covers so many different links. And at the furnace link, they'll have some blast furnace gas, but the blast furnace gas will be used in the next step. So how to allocate and distribute? This problem won't be faced at the national and regional level. If we need to understand the emission of a facility or the emission of a product, we need to solve some unique and specific questions for this product. And at the product level, it's very similar to facility level. You can use a direct measurement method. You can also calculate the emission. We also need to consider the emissions for different techniques, but there is a very special problem for products. That is the emission along the value chain, and it's emission at category 3. And this won't be the problem for regional level and the national level. Another specific question is that at the product level, you will find that one facility will be used to produce different products. So we need to allocate the emission to different facilities. And for same facility, we should also need to allocate the emission to different products. This is a very important issue for us. For example, we need to use our ETS. We need to, based on intensity, to allocate the allowance. Then we need to understand the emission intensity. Then we need to understand how much GHG are produced at each step. So for different products and different facilities, problems are very specific. At the national level, from the list perspective, it's very clear. Within the administrative region of this country, it's the real emission. And this is a basic definition from IPCC guidance. But if we focus to a subnational scale, the regional scale, there is a very special problem for this region. That is the input and output of the power. For example, the power is generated in Inner Mongolia, but it's used in Beijing. So how to calculate the emission? This is a specific problem for the regional level, but it's also a key issue. If we focus on the industry, the company, and the facility, it's the same. It involves in input and output of electricity in different regions. We also need to consider the indirect emission of heat and indirect emission of power. And if we look at the product level, we also need to consider the emission of the value chain. So I want to reaffirm that when discussing data, in fact, we are discussing data at different levels. And is that direction include indirect direction or not? Is that within category 1? Is that emission including the value chain emission? And for different companies, still different. If it is a traditional manufacturing industry, direct and indirect emission are sufficient. If you are an internet company, then it's totally different. If you calculate the direct and indirect emission without considering the value chain emission, then it's nonsense. Sometimes the company told you that we have already offset our emission. It's not pragmatic because it won't offset the carbon emission along its value chain. So we don't think this is an appropriate method to calculate carbon emission. And then we have different ways to collect different data. We have the method of accounting. We have the method of continual monitoring, and we need to consider one important issue for collecting data. We always say that technology advancement can have more accurate and precise measurement, but what's the data for? If you just need an accumulated data, of course it's okay. You will see the accumulated results. If you need the incremental data within a specific period of time, like you need the data of 1 month in the past, you need the data of 1 day in the past, then it's different. So when collecting data, we need to always bear in mind the objective of this data. Then you will see if you need accumulative data or incremental data. If you can have incremental data, it still have different conditions, like who is in charge of this emission, and then for the emitter, they need to shoulder their responsibility. So then we need to conduct the attribution analysis. Who is responsible for this emission? Who is responsible for this data? For example, we can have a data about the carbon emission intensity. Of course, the data is very useful, but if we make a policy based on the data, then just having carbon emission intensity is not enough. So we need to have different kinds of data based on the purpose of this data, and the different data are collected by different ways. So you can't directly compare data at two different levels. When we calculate the data at the national level, we don't merely add all the regional data. It's not that simple because the collection methods are different. But for comparability, for fairness, emission data at different levels should be consistent in case of the same meaning. And data at the different levels should be consistent for the fairness and the comparability of this data. However, it's very hard. It's very hard for us to compare the progress at different levels because it's very hard for us to collect the data at different levels. And due to these differences, we will face some problems. If we just look at the direct emission, we can manage the production side. That's okay. But if you would like to promote reduction, we need not only the production side, but also efforts from the consumption side. Then we need data about consumers. So it's about category 3 or scope 3 or scope 2. So it's repetition. For same GHG, it's managed at the power plant and it's managed once again at the consumer side. But it's necessary because all different players need to make their efforts, but it still causes a problem, which is called the double calculation or overestimate. When we discuss NPC, top-down inventory. However, according to Paris Agreement, there is a very important requirement that is to avoid double calculation of carbon reduction efforts. It's the same for country. If we don't solve the problem of double calculation, we will face a problem.
Yeah, we will face this kind of situation. Almost all the industries are claiming that we are doing a good job, But actually, when you put all the achievements together on the national level, you cannot achieve that goal. For example, like green electricity, for the electricity department says that have a low carbonization. And also for the customer, and they have a green electricity, they have a green certificate. Well, in the accounting, when we are counting the company electricity usage, actually this is an average emission factor. They already have considered about the green contribution, green electricity contribution. They say you buy this certificate, then you cut your emission. And also there are the carbon emission policy. We have the carbon emission, the programs, then they will do the calculation as they get the emission reduction quota. So there will be kind of a double kind of accounting, and there will be some issues. So finally, I just want to say what kind of data we should choose that actually determined by our goal. It's very difficult to say we have two ways, Sims ways or accounting ways. So which way is better than which way? It's really difficult to have this conclusion. Actually, that depends on your criteria, your assessment criteria. What's your goal? And actually, you need to choose the appropriate data, whether you want cumulative data or the overall data, or direct emission or indirect emission, or the value chain emission. At the same level, you need to have a same caliber. So also you need to have the same measurement technology, and the data should be comparable even at the same level. Yeah, even at the same level, it's really difficult to choose the most appropriate the method. Actually, we need to have a balancing between different factors. Yeah, this accuracy, sometimes you have a higher accurate equipment, but the cost is very high. You also need to think about cost effectiveness to see whether this is a high accuracy instrument is worthwhile for us to adopt, and also compatibility. For example, the competent authority, they have some policy, but whether the data is comparable. Finally, the consistency. In order to assess a company's efforts, we need to compare their efforts on different years. If it's not consistency, it's really difficult to check out the progress. You see, we need to have in order to have the data consistency, in order to have the successful evaluation, we suggest in the same industry, yeah, it's better to have same the emission rules. For example, like the electricity generation, it must have the same level, same technology to make sure that the data can be comparable. Or if you have a different data, it's better to coordinate the data. Green electricity is a typical example. Well, if it's not consistent, so they will overestimate the emission reduction. I think that this is a really important issue, and another is about double accounting. When we have a coexistence of various policies, we must consider that the most accurate method is not necessarily the most appropriate or suitable. We must check out what is our goal. You do the selection based on your goal, based on your target. So this is about my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Duan. Thank you for your wonderful sharing. Okay, this calculation method they should be at the same caliber level, and this should be applicable, feasible, and this was well for further study. Yes, good. Okay, we soon will stop this keynote session.
I would like to thank all the 6 speakers, actually. In the beginning, I said it's 4 speakers. Actually, we got 2 additional more than my expectation, and you should regard it as a bonus to our conference. So I thank you all for excellent, encouraging, and inspiring lectures. Let's work together in the future to achieve the more accurate carbon emission measurement. Thank you very much. Now we will have 15 minutes for the tea break. Be sure to go back after 15 minutes. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would also like to invite the first row guests to be on stage to have a group photo taking. 他们会议组织还说要请这个我们前面2排。
We would like to invite our guest speakers come to the stage to take a photo. Well, please come to the stage. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome. Now we have the roundtable discussion on building a scientific carbon measurement system to empower global green and low carbon transformation. I'm the host, Richard Barker from NPL. You'll have to forgive me if I mispronounce some names. The participants we have here are Winand Lau, Feng Zhang, David Silberman, Lu Wenqing, Tu Shandong, Duan Maosheng, and Shenjun Xing. I hope I got close. Please welcome our distinguished panel. We have just heard a wonderful selection of keynote speeches from very different fields and perspectives. I would like to add that none of us, I believe, has seen any of each other's presentations. And so I was very impressed with how all of the presentations integrated into a coherent whole. Something was working behind the scenes to make that happen. I'm also very impressed to see in some of the presentations that the slides were in 2 languages, so that must have been challenging to fit it all in, but again, I'm very impressed. So listening to some of the keynotes, it's clear to me that the task for science is to overcome technical and theoretical challenges in the measurement of carbon, but also to be able to ensure that the scientific output is usable by the societal stakeholders that are the agents of change. I believe this is the route to empowerment, which is what we want to discuss. I invite our distinguished panel members to share the areas that they feel require more attention. Please, panel members, speak for no more than 5 minutes, so that we have some time for interaction and discussion. Firstly, we would like to invite Mr. Winand Lau to share his views, how international organizations such as CIPM, ISO, etc., are paying attention to and promoting the development of carbon measurement technology within and among international organizations.
Thank you, Richard. Well, at this stage, I'm not going to say too much because I have got concluding remarks later. But I think what became very clear is that we need to work together. We're not going to do it alone. And I think that joint statement on digitalization that the BIPM signed, CIPM and BIPM signed with all the other organizations is the way to go. And we probably need to look at something like a zero carbon measurement joint statement amongst these organizations, that we can really pool our resources and work together. For example, the standards organization, you don't want them to now develop standards without the accurate measurement metrology included in that, and that we have to come back later and add it again. So we really need to develop all of this together. Thank you.
I think a very important point there, that we don't want to lose confidence in the information that we're providing. So let's get it right first time. Next, we would like to invite Professor David Silberman to share his views. By interpreting and analyzing from an economic perspective, a unified assessment or quantification of the economic efficiency of carbon emission activities can be achieved. Professor.
Yes. I think that what we have here is a challenge on several levels. One level is the level of the government or the international organization to agree about some sort of standards and to share technologies across the board. But I think within each region, you need two things. On one hand, to make sure that you have a distribution of monitoring technology across the board. Because the worst thing that you want is that few people will be measured very well and others will not be measured. So you try to develop measures that will be there across the board. The other thing that you would like to do is to develop some sort of incentive that people would realize that it's in their self-interest to monitor, and that other people would realize that people that don't monitor really get punished. Otherwise, it will be an issue that people won't do it, other people feel that the system is not fair, and nothing will come out. Now, the last thing is there are different levels of monitoring, and I really think that monitoring of greenhouse gases should be part of a system of monitoring of pollution in general, because the point is that you cannot only monitoring one thing. So you really need to move to a system of environmental pricing, that people are really liable for the pollution that they generate. And the biggest challenge is to overcome all the little gaps in terms of issues of measurement, both in terms of physical measurement and in terms of scientific agreement about measurement. And the other thing, to make sure that you don't have leakages in the system. So if someone measures something, it will be there and it wouldn't be a problem in the long run. I would like to later on to elaborate on it once we move forward.
Okay, let's see if we get a question on that front then. Thank you, David. Next, we would like to invite Mr. Duan Maosheng to share his views on the development of the macro carbon market and the main issues that constrain its development, such as the acquisition of emission data and the role of mutual recognition in the carbon market.
Okay, thank you. Basically, there are two major categories. ETS, it's a mandatory market. Meeting some requirements, you are included, and then you will submit the quota. The next one is a reduction-based market. For example, there are some carbon reduction program. We can quantitate the reduction, and then you can sell the quota. So generally speaking, it used to be based on reduction programs. And now climate change is more and more urgent. We are developing the mandatory market. So data requirements in these two markets are different. If it is a reduction project, you have a formula, you have some baseline emission and the leakage. Then according to this formula, you can calculate out your emission. And you just need the total emission of your project. But for ETS, it's different. More data are needed. You need not only the total emission of the company, you also need the data at the facility level, the data at the product level. So if you pay attention to ETS development, you will find that the administrators are also evolving their mindset. At the very beginning, ETS was managed by NDRC, and NDRC issued guidelines for GHG emission, and these documents just require the total emission of the company. This is because at the very beginning, governments thought we should learn from Europe. We just need to operate the system. We can use historical data to allocate the quota and the allowances. But later we found it's not fair. We need the intensity data, and intensity data is specific to a product. So later, we have all kinds of supplementary tables, and the companies are required to fill in data of each facility, product quantity, etc. So the requirement for data is different for different requirements. This is my first point. Then, even if it is data at the product level and the facility level, you also have different methods. You can use SIMS or you can use a counting method. Now, just one industry is involved, power generation, but it's big enough. It's over 5 billion tons, and most of the companies are state-owned companies. They have a very good foundation of data, but there's still a problem. We allow companies to use the real measure to calculate its emission. I'll give you an example, like the coal power plant. Companies are allowed to calculate the carbon of the burning, but there are many problems. For example, if the sampling is right, if the monitoring is right, there are many problems. And in pilot programs, the accounting system is more recommended. We can't judge which one is better. If we don't use the real measurement value, then many problems won't exist. So it depends on which methods you will use. Yes, some method may be accurate, but it will also bring some consequences. Don't pursue absolute accuracy, or you need to, based on the policy objective, you should also based on your requirements and needs. Thank you.
That's an interesting point when it comes to integration of these different measurements. Next, please share your views, academic Lu Wenqing. What are the developments?
Please use the microphone.
Continue? We continue.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So the question?
So now, sorry, apologies. Let's get back on track. What are the development trends of cutting-edge technologies such as greenhouse gas monitoring, and how to collaborate on carbon neutrality and ecological environment governance?
Okay. So I think probably may I speak Chinese?
You may.
Yeah.
I have a translation.
因为在座的都是
Because most of the audiences are my colleagues. And I think GHG monitoring technology is a very important foundation to build the scientific carbon measurement. In recent years, the GHG monitoring technology are advancing very fast. Now we have satellite, remote control, on-ground monitoring, and this has been put into an integrated system. And I think on-ground station and satellite monitoring are two major models, because on-ground station sites can provide precise data, and the satellites have a very large coverage. So I think 2 points are very important for the future. Firstly, precision. We need to increase the space and time resolution, because we need to improve the precision of the data, because the concentration from the industry park is high, but the environmental changes varies differently in different industry. So if we use new devices and new sensors, so that we can monitor and identify very minor changes. Next point is the integration of diverse data. Just now, Director Mao Shen said that you can't judge if the data is incorrect or not if you just have one source. So in the future, we will integrate different sources of data, like data from the on-ground side, data from the satellite. Third point is AI, the application of AI and the big data. As the advancement of big data and AI, the GHG monitoring will be more intelligent and automatic. So it means that data processing will be faster. Then we can better predict the changes of the GHG and even the changes of the climate. So with evolving technologies, we can expect that monitoring technologies can better support sustainability. Thank you.
Well, that's an interesting field for the future, AI and data, and certainly something many of us, I'm sure, are interested in. Okay, next, please share your views, academic Tu Shangdong. Discuss the development strategy of hydrogen energy and green hydrogen carbon neutral energy system.
Probably I would like to change another topic concerning the multi-scaling digital twin systems for manufacturing system in the context of carbon neutrality.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I think this is a complement for all the six plenary lectures.
Otherwise, to switch it to Chinese. I think that previously, our six the speakers they have wonderful presentations, and other the panelists have made great additional comments. I just want to say that when we are focusing on the digital technology, we must pay attention on the specific methods. I'm from the manufacturing industry. I just want to mention about digital twin plus AI may play some important application roles in the carbon industry. As you know that for the digital twin, it's a kind of a virtual twin for the physical system. The whole industry or the whole country, well, you can build up a digital twin for this physical system. Of course, in the first place, you must do the measurement. You must have the measurement on the physical things. So this measurement on the physical things is the first step. For in the carbon area, the measurement of the carbon emission is really important. It's the first step. The digital twin system has wide applications. For example, like the application in the energy efficiency, it has also been used in the building system. The local system will be easily to have modeling. I think that maybe you have some trial. We believe that it will be really reduce the building's emission to improve energy efficiency by 30% to 40%. The digital twin system, and first, I think that it's used in the manufacturing industry. For example, and we use digital twin to monitor the failure, avoid the failure, to ensure the operation safety. And this is really number one requirement from the manufacturing industry. Now we expand our interest and we put it in a wide area. You know that carbon neutrality is even a bigger goal for us. So we hope that digital twin can also be applied in the carbon undertaking. For me, so I have many projects in the chemical industry, like a heat exchanger, to improve the heat exchanger energy efficiency, and this will also help reduce the carbon emission, like the reactors, like ethylene or the cracking. If you increase the efficiency by 20% or 30%, it will help reduce the coal consumption or the crude oil consumption. So in the perspective of the petrochemical or manufacturing industry, the digital twin plus AI is highly necessary. So the initial result shows very promising. As you know that the energy consumption in the manufacturing industry accounts to half. The carbon emission in manufacturing industry contributes 30% of the carbon emission. In this area, just we mentioned that the heat exchanger or reactor, we can do that for the one unit, and then we can expand to the whole industry, and or even in the whole sector, we can set up the digital twin system in the whole sector. Then step by step, then we can do the measurement for the whole sector, whole industry. I think that many the industry peers, they even use that in the national level called the macro scale digital twin system. Not only micro, not a small scale, but to the meso scale. You know that meso scale is in the medium, in the middle, and also macro. Macro is the broad perspective. In a macro level, 17 Sustainable Development Goal can also have the digital twin. We can call it the super mega scale digital twin system. If we finally able to achieve that, that would be wonderful. That's all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have to say that this concept of integrating digital twins at different scales sounds like a very challenging and interesting avenue. So thank you. Maybe now I can help out a little bit. So I would like to invite, excuse me, I've mixed up my notes a little bit. I would like to invite Director Feng Xiang to share your views on how to build a carbon measurement technology system with examples of advanced carbon measurement technology research and application cases.
Okay. 其实我刚才的报告里头呢
In my presentation, yeah, I just centered on this topic, and now I want to change it from another angle. I just want to share my perspective with you. For us, in order to achieve zero carbon peak, carbon neutrality, we need the national level efforts. And market is also very powerful. Only when we leveraging the market, and they will be very promising. For example, market, like carbon trading or carbon taxation. This is a market behavior. In the market, the entity they will be very serious about that taxation, because if you levy tax on this entity, it will involve the interest. Therefore, this measurement accuracy is really important because it related with this entity's interest. And secondly, in order to build up this measurement system, we need technology. We need to develop various kind of the system. But I think that technology, I really favor technology. So we need international cooperation to develop technology to form this system. So first step is the technology, second step is practice, and the third is cooperation. So these three steps are really necessary. If we only talk about technology, that's not comprehensive enough. The third point I want to say, against the cooperation background, we need to reach a consensus as soon as possible. For example, you mentioned about 1 ton carbon emission, then you report 1 ton carbon emission, and this report show we align with the real situation, and then requires a lot of technology breakthrough. I really value this the digital measurement technology. Digital technology will be really the wonderful weapon for us to address that. I just share 3 points with you. Thank you.
I was very intrigued, I think, and a very good connection made between measurement accuracy and taxation. Certainly, in my experience, accuracy is quite important there. Finally now, sorry, I get my notes back. I would like to invite Professor Jing Zhenjun to share his views, discuss some technological developments in the field of clean combustion and household waste treatment, please.
We're glad to have a chance to take part in this meeting and share my point with everybody. Now I use Chinese speak about this combustion technology and by car making.
Well, I will touch upon that this clean combustion technology. For the carbon neutrality, we must be clear how much carbon should be the limit for us to emit to the atmosphere. It's 75 billion tons. Okay, in 2020, so what is the intensity? That is 4,100 ppm. So that's 75 billion ton. For the CO2, that's 450 ppm. So this is the limit. So this is the concentration is 450 ppm, and now currently is really very close to this limit. So if we achieve 450 ppm, then the temperature will increase 2 degrees. The ocean level will increase by 7 meters. There will be disaster to the world. That's why we need not to break that limit. So this is a statistic I want to share with you. For China, every year we emit 10 billion tons of carbon to 10 billion tons CO2 to the atmosphere. So the world total emit 42 billion tons CO2. So if we do not do that control, then we will soon reach our limit. So how to achieve the carbon peak and carbon neutrality? There are 2 ways. So first, we need to reduce the carbon emission to the atmosphere. Second is about the remove the carbon from the atmosphere. This is about negative carbon technology. And I would like to share some ways. For example, like combustion. Yeah, currently the combustion is really an effective way. It can high efficient combustion that can reduce the emission, like organic waste and medical waste and industry hazards waste, etc. So we need to think about the complete combustion. Currently, we haven't yet achieved the higher complete combustion. For our team, we are doing the research. We have successfully found a solution for the high efficient combustion of a solid waste. Just last week, we achieved the industry hazard waste, the 2,500 calorie combustion. And for the waste combustion, we already addressed the average 2,000 degree, the CO2 zero emission. Soon we will publish our data. This is about the combustion technology. Also, we can have the high efficient, the coal combustion. Another technology is the biocarbon technology. Biocarbon technology, and through the photosynthesis, remove the carbon from the atmosphere. We have this biocarbon, and it can reduce 6% of the CO2 in the atmosphere. The biocarbon can improve the soil quality, and it will be 2/3 of the carbon fixation in the atmosphere. In the life, in the water treatment, this will be very highly efficient way. It can be some kind of a polymer, high performance polymer material. And this technology will be really a big breakthrough. For the biocarbon in the production, so far it's not a large scale. Our carbon technology is like a baking technology. It's oven. It's a very old-fashioned. We do the combustion for 1 year. The conversion is quite low. And in the 14th Five Plan, we have the catalytic technology research, and currently we have made a breakthrough on the catalytic technology. We believe that soon we will be able to achieve zero carbon emission or negative carbon emission soon. Thank you.
There. So a lot of new technologies, particularly around removal of CO2s. So I think we have a little bit of time still. I mean, from my perspective, I heard a very diverse set of responses here. To me, they fitted into three kind of broad categories. One was around society. And so we heard about the standards and the need for standards to last long term, a quality of information, broader environmental modeling, taxation. It was interesting how taxation was brought in. So there's the societal side. Then there's the technical side. So we've heard about a lot of different technologies, tackling efficiency, tackling carbon removals, etc. And then the third area or third grouping that I noticed was the digital perspective. So whether that's digital twins or modeling and how we bring this all together. So a very diverse kind of set of domains covered. I would be interested, David, I know you did ask specifically if you could expand a little bit on leakages, so maybe you can just expand on that point just for a short while. That might be interesting for the audience.
I think that especially when it comes to carbon sequestration, a lot of time things seems much better than they are. For example, when you have soil carbon sequestration or when you have storage of carbon, you have to make sure that it really stays there in the long run. So I think to some extent, monitoring is not a momental monitoring, but it's a continuous monitoring. And that is a big challenge. The other thing is, especially in biological, I suppose you plant some trees or you grow some other agricultural activities. Then you burn it. So to some extent, you really need to monitor things on a continuous level. So that's the element that is very important, that Monitoring is not one-time shot, it's a dynamic shot, and you have to follow it all the time. So eventually what happens, every person will have a little bit, every firm will have a little bit of accounting, and to some extent you follow up what's going on, and that means that the system will be digital. And because of the big challenges of computation, because you will have new technologies, from time to time you have to update the measurement. But the key element is to prevent a situation that you look as if you did something, but after a while it comes back to haunt you. So this is really very important. The second thing that's important about leakages, you need to know two levels of measurement, micro level and macro level. Only way you measure leakages if the macro level is different than the micro level. So I think in this regard it's very important to have continuous measurement, two levels of measurement, and some sort of penalties in case that you caught cheating. For me as an economist, I don't believe that anything will work if you don't have some sort of pricing for carbon or penalty for cheating.
Okay, thank you. And I thought it was interesting that we heard a lot of discussion around integration in the kind of spatial dimensions in terms of footprints here. And so the temporal dimension is an interesting one, obviously because technologies will change and improve through time. So I was wondering if any of my panel would like to comment on this problem of how do we maintain a coherency over the long term?
Maybe I can add a few comments. And it's really very much important to have this continuous monitoring, particularly for our digital twin systems. Even for in the industry level, we say it's a meso scale, a micro scale. 就是我讲，就如果要联系。
If we need to have continuous monitoring, then at the micro level, we monitor the product and the facility, then the challenge is very big. And sensors will be very important in addition to measurement standards, and hardability is very important. And these are great challenge for us at the macro level. For the time, for a longer time, and at a larger scale, the monitoring is also a challenge for us.
Your idea about this continuous monitoring.
Should we give an opportunity, I think, to explore some other avenues? So I think I'd like to pick up a little bit on the technology opportunity that's been kind of shared in a few different areas. And I think linked to the question of leakages is carbon capture technology. So I guess my question open to the panel here is, how do we assure carbon capture technologies are going to last for the long term? Or was that an unfair question? Perhaps that is an area of research.
I can say something. This is a very important issue because technically speaking, CCS, CCUS, and deforestation are very important. To avoid leakage, first of all, you need to have accurate measurement. However, in addition to that, more important is not technology, it's accountability. Who can have the responsibility if something bad happened? If the company is benefited, however, 20 to 30 years ago, it's leakage. So who should take the responsibility and take a longer run? When signed the Kyoto Protocol, forestation can use to offset their emission. And then we found that 30 years ago, the global landscape is changed. Some nation disappeared, so who can take this responsibility? So that's why we are discussing under the market mechanism. Can we have the carbon removal project? Some people don't agree with carbon emission because they said even though you can monitor, you can't find the person in charge. Thank you.
A fascinating topic here, considering this intergenerational responsibility that we have to pass down. I have to say this is a question I had not asked myself, and probably a very important question because this is a long-term endeavor that I think we are all trying to achieve. Can I just do a quick time check here because the clocks, how are we doing on time? Ten minutes, good. Okay, so we have some good time. Let's pick up a little bit on points that I thought were very interesting around equality of information, equality of monitoring, not punishing those who put more effort into monitoring. I was wondering if any of the panel have any views on how we can ensure fairness in the measuring of carbon and the responsibilities that come with being measured. Winand, please.
I can give it a go. I'm just thinking aloud, actually, but you probably need a type of regulation rather than spontaneous, voluntary monitoring measurement, because as someone said today during the presentations, the low emitters will actually employ the best technology for the best measurement because they basically want to show how low their emissions are. And where the others, without the technology to really do it and reduce the emission, will not have an incentive to do that. So you can either do one of two things. You can really regulate, and a country like China has got the ability to do that, but I'm not so sure that many of the other countries, for example, in my region, Africa, really has the capability to do that. And then the next way would probably be incentives. And if we can find the right incentives, and probably the developing world need the developed world to assist with those incentives in one way or another, then I think we would be able to move forward on that.
Yeah, interesting response. David.
I think you cannot have any monitoring system without having a third party that sets standard, develop monitoring, and evaluate it. Now, what happens is that a certain type of user may get some sort of time to catch up, or you can have some sort of discount. But at a certain level, at every category, people have to be liable. They can get credit, and if they don't perform, they get penalized. Now, the issue of, for example, what do you do over time? Every time that you sell an asset, it's like when you sell a house. The owner, whoever is a new owner, buy the responsibility of what happened in the past, and it's included in the price of the asset. So to some extent, carbon emission can be like a liability for every other type of activity, and it will be an asset like everything else, that it will be a part of a certain property. So if you have a property that is suspect generating a lot of emission in the past, it will reduce the value of the property. Or on the other hand, if it kept record-wide, it will have a high value. But the key element is to have third party evaluate and monitor activities within countries, and the big challenge is that you need to have some global authority that look among countries. That's the role, because what you may want to make sure that countries will believe one another when they get the numbers. So maybe we can start saying, okay, developed countries will be there first, but hopefully globally everyone will be there through element of technology transfer and sharing.
Thank you, thank you. So Listening to these answers, one of the things that I'm aware of in any kind of systems challenge, which I think this is what we face, is there's an emergent nature to the solution. So we won't know all of the solutions now. So I want to link that with some of the points talked about in terms of digital twins and the ability of digital twins to sense ahead of real progress so that we understand how we might need to change the approach before it actually arrives. So I'm wondering if you have a thought on the role of digital twins in helping us see into the future.
This is a very big picture question. But yeah, I really need a lot of work. Firstly, we need to model the physical object, and we need a very good mathematics. And anyway, we need to measure it, and the measurement is very much important, as we discussed this whole afternoon, and also the standards. You have to standard, and so that we can monitor to get the correct results. And that means the information should be of high quality. And then you, based on your computation and AI estimation also, you probably will give a better the path for the physical, the production line also to go ahead. Yeah. And then after monitoring and calculation, you will have a feedback. Then you have a feedback. So feedback is very much important also. It is rather unfortunate people, for the mega system, particularly social systems, and then we don't have this good feedback system. We had to establish.
Yes.
我们还是需要数字孪生系统。
You need to have accurate model, accurate measurement, and accurate feedback mechanism. For a big and complicated system at the industrial level, the feedback is not good enough. I have mentioned a mega digital twin system is under research. 17 SDGs should be included. However, how about the feedback? Who should receive the feedback? It's very hard to implement it. So I think implementation is a big challenge for climate change.
Challenge in the future.
Yes.
But we can get it better. Anyway, I think it's the right direction.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're really touching on some very complex and difficult challenges. So I'd like to change the tone of the conversation and ask a question on of the panel. Which opportunities give you most hope that you are looking at? To anyone in the panel. So really, where can we be optimistic? Because these challenges are very significant.
Richard, there's a quick answer on the measurement, at the measurement side. I think if we look at our system that has been set up from the international organization through the NMIs, and we look at this tremendous network that we have set up and really working together, that is really, I've worked in many areas in my life and the last 20 years in metrology, and it's really the area where people collaborate, join forces, work together. So at least from my perspective, from the measurement side, I think there's great hope.
Any other comments from any of the panel? Sorry, maybe someone we've not had so much. Yeah?
Well, I think that there will always be room for the technology to advance. We hope that this technology move toward the direction we want. And also policy is very important. We need to have the policy to incentivize the technology. For the technology, there is no good or bad technology, but if the technology is related with the money, and then we need to have incentive policy. Yeah.
I think speaking as a metrologist, this measurement point does resonate to me because from my perspective, and I hope this is shared, when you're interested in measurement, what you're interested in is truth. What is truth? And so, in a way, I think this is something that we can all share and hold on to, is this kind of collaboration around truth, and there will be a lot of noise elsewhere. But the truth won't change, and this should guide us. So, unless there's any other comments, I think we've run out of time. I hope the audience enjoyed that discussion, and you got a bit more insight into some of the presentations and what's behind them. I'd like to thank the participants here for sharing their ideas and thank the audience for paying attention to this very challenging discussion, I think, at times. Anyway, this concludes the roundtable discussion, so thank you to my panelists and thank you to the audience. I've never done it in 2 languages. It's very challenging.
Well, that war should work with the diversity, different language.
I've never. I appreciate it. I was thrown.
Languages, different topics, different areas of research.
Diversity.